What's up, summoners? King Blair here. As many of you may know, and if you've watched from the previous streams, I recently undertook a challenge this RTA Season 4 to try to get a champion using only RGB heroes and without using Seaside, who is a very strong RGB hero. And what I want to talk about today is the things I learned, not just about RGB heroes themselves, but actually overall about Epic 7. And hopefully this tips can help you if you're someone that wants to climb an RTA, but may not have all the meta units that are out there. Hopefully these tips and the things I learned help you as well. But if you like the video, make sure you like, subscribe, and join the Discord server. Link down in the description. Without further ado, let's get right into it. The RGB challenge, it was a blast. It was some of the most fun I've had with Epic 7 so far, and it was definitely challenging, right? So before we get to the top 5, so kind of an honorable mention for the top 5. Just overall, it's fun, and it's way harder than using ML heroes. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Using ML heroes just gives you a huge advantage because there's so many powerful units. One of the biggest things is, like, for example, Arbiter Vildred. That was a force ban for me. I have to pre-ban Arbiter Vildred because there's not a single true RGB counter to Arbiter Vildred that Arbiter Vildred doesn't kill. Like, for example, Lilibet. You're not making Lilibet faster than Arbiter Vildred, which means that Arbiter Vildred will always get to use 1s3, which is usually pretty hard to deal with. So Arbiter Vildred was not, you have to prevent. So you're more limited, and there's other scenarios like that you're kind of limited in your options. And we'll talk about that. That's actually one of the later ones. But overall, it is harder. So that's an honorable mention. It is significantly harder. I don't want to say that it's, oh yeah, everything is easy. No, it's gear plays a major role, and that's honestly the biggest thing is gear plays a major role. But now let's actually get to the top 5. The top 5 things I learned from doing this RGB challenge. First off, this is going to be team cores are invaluable. What does this mean? For 99% of those matches that you saw, those 50 matches that normally I have like that I got to play over and over again, there was almost no game where I didn't pick Ross, where I didn't pick Cerise, and where I didn't take Falconeer Clury. I took those 3 units almost every single match without fail. Ross, Falconeer Clury, and I'll show the stats as well in case you've never seen them. Ross, Falconeer Clury, Cerise here, and Falconeer Clury. And it really just shows the strength because these units synergize so well together and give so much draft flexibility that by picking these 3, it gave me the last 2 slots to either contest the picks that my opponent was going to pick to counter center units, or just to pick up my DPSs for the right situation. And I already have ways to deal with a variety of situations. Ross Immunity deals a lot with heavy teams that rely on big bursts, like a Tywin, right? Having that Ross set up an immunity early on is very valuable. Ross is also very good at tanking up for your team with an S3 defense buff if you do need it. Then we have Falconeer Clury, who not only works as a speed contester in the way I made her, but also can strip the opponent and take out a priority target unit, which is amazing, right? And then the Cerise, working as support as a speed contester, but also being extra damage with the S1 dual attacks and giving me advantage with the S2 and letting me control the pace of the fight. So all 3 units, really good work together. And it showed me that core teams are invaluable. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to use the exact same team core as me. Ross and Falconeer Clury, while they are very good team core, there are other ones. There's Crawl and Falconeer Clury still work pretty good. There is things like Crawl and Lilius. There's Fallen Cecilia and Lilius. There's the more quote-unquote whale ones, or the more meta ones with T-Crosset and General Purgus, right? But having a strong team core, that's your go-to to have. That whatever situation you want these 2-3 units, and you're always going to try to draft those 3 units. Not only will it help you get better at drafting your last 2 counter picks, it'll also help you understand those units better and how you can incorporate them and how you can support them with each other, and you get a lot more experience. So having a good team core is a completely invaluable situation, right? It's just, you cannot go wrong with it. Now, the other one is going to be, one thing I learned is a smaller champion pool overall means you are more restricted, but does not mean that you can't win games. So if we look at here, my RGB pool was already not the biggest, right? Like, it looks pretty big, but then you compare it to how many 5-stars MLs there are, it's almost like, it's like a little bit over 2, but for the most part, I only had 13 units, right? So while there is a lot of units that are RGB 5-stars, there is just as many non-RGB units, right, that you're restricted from. And for you, that may be that you don't have certain ML heroes, right? Because not everyone has certain heroes. You may not have an Arbiter Builder. You may not have an FCC. You may not have all these different types of heroes that other people may have. But you have what you have, and you have to learn to work with what you've got. If you're always complaining about the things that you don't have, I realize it doesn't get you anywhere, right? I didn't get to have all the units I wanted. I didn't get to build a Polides. I didn't get to build a Celine. I was struggling against Cleave. I'm going to be honest with y'all, Cleave matchup and Control matchup was not fun. I lost the majority of them. Why? Because I just didn't have the units built. And it was terrible. But I still made do with what I had. For example, for Control teams, I built my Violet. And I had him build, right? And Violet, while he doesn't necessarily control, was kind of control, a lot of control units are water. So like Cerise and F10A, or even units like Dizzy if they do decide to use a Dizzy. But for the most part, F10A was like the main control unit, right? Or even units like a Tywin. So having a Violet build that's able to potentially dodge, kind of functioning as a Violet, was very, very good. And it actually did help me a lot in those matchups. The other one was units like Robbie against the Cleave teams. Why? Because Robbie does have the potential to cut in. And I was also using Elena a lot. Elena was my main way I counter Cleave because she can still cut in and stop a Cleave. So there are units out there that you can use to do and counter different units. Don't feel like you're restricted because of your small champion pool. In total, I actually counted it. I ended up using a grand total of 13 units, with only 7 to 8 of them being used consistently. So a pool of 13 units is something you can get within 4 months. Right? And this got me to champion. Imagine what it can do to you if you're just trying to get to masters. So all I want to say is a small champion pool, you are restricted. You will get frustrated. There was a lot of times I wanted to pick Champ C against Control, but I couldn't. So it is frustrating, but it's not bad. So that's going to be number 4. Now on to number 3. Building off meta units and wonky units that have good synergy with other units not only will help you get more wins, but it also lets you have more fun. So that's something that I often forget. Epic 7 is a game. I'm here to have fun and play with my waifus, right? And one unit I love, but I never get to use, is Sermia. Sermia was an MVP against a ton of tank teams. Why? No one was expecting their A Tywins, their T Crossettes, their General Purgases to not only get outsped by a Sermia, but one-shotted, right? So it got me way more wins than it should have, honestly, against players with better units and better gear with me at the time, just because they don't have no idea what Sermia does. So I was having a ton of fun playing with Sermia, and I was able to incorporate her into my drafts and actually use her. And if you see the speed, she is speed tuned with Ross. While there is a small potential for Ross to outspeed for the most part, it's a really nasty combo, right? Sermia S3 into a Ross S2. What I want to mean with this is build those off-meta units that you've been thinking about, that you've had in the back burner. You would be surprised what off-meta units can do if you have a plan for them and you know what you want to do. That's why there's people that have so much success with units like Charlotte, right? Not a lot of people know how Charlotte works. Not a lot of people understand the pressure that Charlotte can have on a game, and they won't ban her because they just don't understand it, don't really feel threatened by her. They feel threatened by other units in the draft that they know and have gone against several times. So that priming that has been going on, you can actually abuse by building off-meta, wonky builds that catch people off guard, right? So that part was really cool. Like even with things like like F10A, right? I use a damage F10A, and when I was able to get her S3 off when the people weren't expecting it, like they'll bring all anti-control, and then they would die, or they would ban my quote-unquote DPS because they're like, oh, this dude just has all full control, just Cerise F10A, and then my F10A would do a ton of damage. And then they would be kind of shocked and would lose the fight, right? So building off-meta units, building off-meta builds, if you have a plan for them, if you have a way that they will work, it's invaluable. It will give you so many wins. There were so many wins from people just not knowing what my units did. So that part, really, really, really cool. But now, on to number 2. Understanding the game and meta drafting. So just the meta, right? Understanding the meta as well as knowing how to draft. This is probably like one of those things that people often forget, right? So a lot of people, their biggest complaint on why they can't climb is the units, right? Well, we clearly proved that wrong because I was able to do it with RGB units. The other one would be the gear. Now that one is a very valid argument. The gear is a very important part. You do need gear to get you a lot higher. But another really important ignored part that a lot of those lower players or lower level players don't understand is the importance of understanding how to draft and knowing what the meta is at your current rank. right? That's the big one at your current rank. I can tell you all about how T-Crusade and General Perkins are busted, but in gold, RB is your biggest threat. Still, to this day, it's always RB SSB, and it will almost always be those two units. General Perkins is starting to creep in there, but you need to understand what's good in your meta, because you can have the same gear as your opponent, but if you don't know what's meta and you're not ready for it, you're going to get smacked and you're going to lose, right? So you need to be aware of what's meta so you have units built around it. For example, I knew Robbie's broken. That's why I built Sarmia, because I was like, okay, how do you deal with Robbie? You one-shot her. I don't have Gisei build, so let me just build a really good Sarmia to deal with Robbie. That was my thought process. Or let's say a Tywin. How the heck do I deal with a Tywin? Well, I built Fire CC because I know I was going to see some A Tywins. So I built Fire Cecilia just to counter the A Tywin. And I built Vivian as well just to deal with the A Tywin, right? And A Tywin wasn't a big problem for me because I was ready for it. I was ready for Last Rider Crawl. I know Last Rider Crawl often gets picked. What did I have? Regular Crawl, right? I had Regular Crawl right there, ready. And then for Landy and Stenna teams, I knew I still needed AoE, and that's why I built a Speed Charon that could double as a DPS unit. Now, this one didn't work as well as I wanted, but it was still there, you know, and it still functioned. So that's understanding that metagame and being prepared for it is really big, but not only do you need to understand that metagame, you also need to understand how to draft, and that's the big one. So for me, I didn't want to reveal my DPSs because since I'm limited to only using RGB, if I pick 2 Earth DPS, they pick a Lilius and a Robbie, and I automatically lose the game, right? So that's why I was like, okay, I cannot pick my DPSs too early, because if I do that, they're going to answer. They're going to have answers. That's why I almost always first pick Cerise, because that would put a lot of pressure on the opponent, and it would stop people from trying to cleave because they don't want to risk it. They don't want to try risking cleaving me, my Cerise, that could be 285 speed, right? So they're not going to try to cleave. They're deterred from it just from me first picking Cerise. And then for Bruiser teams, they'll want to pick units that can deal with Cerise, such as Lilius, who I have answers for, right? So that's why I often first pick Cerise to add that draft pressure. And then after the answer, F. Clury and Ross, because this way, not only am I answering the potential drafts, that's usually tank drafts and Bruiser drafts, because Ross and Falconeer Clury do a really good job at that, but I'm also able to kind of not give away too much information, so I'm the one that gets that last say, those last couple of picks to pick my DPSs, which range from Robbie, Sermia, Kayron, Violet, F10A, you know, depending on this Landy, depending on that situation, I could pick different units that would help me, right, and different DPSs, and they wouldn't have as much of a chance to respond, right? So that's why it was really, really good. And then sometimes, if they first pick Cerise, or the first pick Last Rider Crawl, I shouldn't pick Cerise, right? Even though Cerise is really good, with Last Rider Crawl, I already know they're not cleaving, for the most part, right? If someone first picks Last Rider Crawl, I know they're not cleaving, so then I know I don't need Cerise, so I can go straight into Crawl, who I know has a great matchup against Last Rider Crawl, and I go Falconeer Clury, who also has a really good matchup against Last Rider Crawl, but also kind of still protects me a little bit from cleave. So all this stuff of understanding cleave, understanding what's meta, it's very important for you to climb. If you don't know what's meta and you go into a game and then you get destroyed and then you do nothing to stop that draft, then what are you doing, right? Then you're never going to climb. You can't wait for the next meta. You have to actively start building units that can counter meta, right? Because that way, if all you do is complain about a Tywin, for example, and I don't know if this is you, but if all you say, I can't climb because of a Tywin, I don't have answers to a Tywin, the first thing I would ask you is, have you built an immunity setter? Have you built units like Vivian? Have you built units like Cecilia? You know, any immunity setter works. Or even Ross, because he can set immunity early. And you're like, yeah, but then they just bring Basar. And I'm like, okay, if they just bring Basar, that means that their team is already looking very heavy on the control side. You can have units that can counter control like the Stina or Champ C, and then they're kind of screwed, right? You can bait it, or you can just ignore it, ban their stripper, because if they don't pick 2 strippers, you just ban the stripper, and then the A-Tower does nothing because you have immunity, right? So that's why you need to start building and understanding drafts. You need to look at your weaknesses and build your units off of that. That's a very important one, and I know I took a long time about this one, but it's just very important that you understand how to draft and understand what's meta and build units according if you're trying to climb. And then last, but definitely not least, it is possible to climb even when you're all these restrictions. I know this is a cheesy one. I know it's cheesy. I know you guys are like, come on, really, King Blair, that's really the one thing you learned? Yes, it is possible. And I've always been saying, and there's just always so many people making excuses that they can't climb because they're not whales. They can't climb because they don't have army. They can't climb because they don't have ML heroes. But at the end of the day, it's all what you make it. It's all in your determination, your game knowledge, your experiences. And at the end of the day, just the dream of being able to make it and get that nice skin, right? If you're someone that loves Royale and can get the skin, then you can do it, right? It is possible. If you're a newer player, well, it may be very hard for you because you don't have the gear right now. Just know that from farming, you'll eventually get there. And even like if this is your 3rd month playing the game, by the end of the season, you should be able to do it, right? 13 units, that's all you need. 13 well-built units can get you to champion. And if you're just trying to get to masters for that skin, that goes down to like 7, right? So just know, yes, RMO heroes and having units doesn't make it easier. Absolutely. I'm not going to lie to you guys. But the fact is, you can do it if you believe in yourself. At the end of the day, though, from any of this stuff, I know it was cheesy for the last one, but I just want to say this game is all about having fun. So if you're not having fun, you're not building the units that you like because they're not meta, or you're not doing the things that you like to do because you don't want to stray behind, and you're being stressed, then you're not doing it right. You should be having fun. So even for me, even though I have a terrible win rate and I can't flex on Reddit and I can't be like, oh, look at my nice win rate, I'm so good at this game, I had a ton of fun doing this challenge. And I hope that you guys try challenges like this. Try the limits of yourself. I feel like I became a better player from this, and when I go back and re-gear my account to use both ML and RGB heroes, I'll be a much better player. But that is all I got for you guys today. I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and we'll see y'all next time. Peace.